went to Manila. It's been almost 15 years ago. One of the spots we stopped at was the Tondo section of Manila. I had heard for years about the kids that live in abandoned buildings, garbage dumps, in cemeteries. But unless you've actually seen it, unless you've experienced it, it's just something that maybe you hear on a television news show or maybe possibly see the pictures in a magazine. But the first time when I walked into those buildings there in Tondo, when I walked with the kids into the garbage dumps there where they live, I saw not just the squalor, not just what I would think are some of the toughest living conditions that I've ever seen in the world, but when you see what that does to the soul of a child, what it does to the heart of a family, you cannot help but have your own heart broken. You cannot help but have your own mind affected by what you're seeing all around you. And I was walking through this garbage dump on a small path, and I saw ahead what looked like a rat in the garbage, and I stopped. And I moved a little closer, and I thought, wait a minute, that's not a rat. And as I moved closer, I found out it was a little Filipino girl's ponytail that was sticking out of the garbage. And I moved in and pushed the garbage away from her dead body. I took her by the shoulder, rolled her out of the garbage, and as I did, I saw that her face was covered with ants, and the ants had eaten her eyeballs out of her head. And I had to make a decision. I had to make a choice. What do I do? I've said for years that the need is the call. But now I'm standing there in a situation that even I had never been in before. And I made up my mind that day that we would not only start Metro Sunday schools throughout the Manila, Philippine area, but the primary focus would be in Tondo. When the folks from Heart of God Church went with me to Tondo, quite honestly, I didn't know what to expect. They'd never been there before, and I had never taken a group of visitors with me from any place. But because of the relationship that I have with Pastor Howe and been to the church so many times, I felt very comfortable. And I remember when we first got to Tondo and we were standing in one of the abandoned buildings where nearly 1,000 people live without electricity, without water, without toilets. And I watched them as they stood there almost in disbelief for several moments, looking at the living conditions, seeing something that they'd only maybe heard about or seen in pictures. And yet as the kids came around and started smiling at them and holding their hands and just pulling on their shirt, I suddenly saw a group of people that went from being utter strangers in a very strange land to now suddenly feeling the real heart of God. That's what the Heart of God Church represents. It's not only the name on a church, it's the very DNA of their existence. Because when you catch the heart of God, it moves you, it pushes you, it compels you, it moves you to the uttermost parts of the earth. That's what makes the difference. That's what Heart of God Church represents in a way that I have not seen any other church represent. And even though many of the folks that went on that trip were very young, they were mature way beyond their age. Not only did I witness firsthand their desire to serve, but I saw up close and personal a manifestation of a spiritual level that I have not seen in a long, long time. That's an attribute to the leadership of Heart of God Church. After being in the full-time ministry now for almost 50 years, I've had the God-given opportunity and privilege to travel to every part of this world. And yet, I remember like it was yesterday, the very first time when I walked in to Heart of God Church. I remember what I would call a divine connection. And I don't say that often, folks. And for those of you that know me, you know that's true. A divine connection between Pastor Howe and Leo. Somehow, the Heart of God was more than just the name of a church. It was bigger than just the title of an organization that I have to say quite honestly, folks, in these nearly 50 years has never happened. To me, that meant something way beyond just being able to come to a church and share the missions message of reaching a generation. It was about me not just spending time once a year coming to share my heart and preach the word, but now it's become an investment of this preacher into a generation, into a church that I've learned to love with all my heart, into a relationship with Pastor Howe and Leo that has, quite honestly, encouraged me personally, not just the ministry, but the man, more than they'll ever know. And me being able to be a part of the lives of the young men and the young women that I have watched now grow up as young people, watched as they've grown up from being young people into solid, not just men and women of God, but stalwarts of the faith, missions-minded, Christ-centered, biblical students that are determined to be the ones to make a difference in the next generation. I've watched it in action. I've watched them as they've walked the streets with me, as I've heard them pray, as I've seen them cry, and I've felt their heart. The heart of God is really found at the Heart of God Church and in their people. And just to be a part of that is a privilege beyond my wildest expectations. And for that, I'll be eternally grateful.